Okay, part two. So they have, they call them Zias, and that is what they teach the children to call you. And these are children from different countries with different languages. So everybody learns Italian in Cenacolo because Sister Elvira is Italian. And because we all come from all over the world, there's one language that's chosen so that we can all understand each other and communicate, and that is Italian. So even though a lot of people spoke English sometimes, or Croatian or French or different languages, Italian was the one that was absolutely necessary to speak, you know, in order to be there to communicate and to move up within, you know, this cult. So you have your kids, you don't have your kids. The person in charge of that house, which many times, I'd say, I was in smaller houses where the person in charge was a friend of mine. The place that I escaped from, which is nicknamed Auschwitz, I kid you not, this house was the first women's house opened, and it is called, known as, affectionately, Auschwitz. And we'll get to that towards the end of it, and why I believe that's a very suitable nickname for the place. There is a woman there, I believe she's still there. Her name is Arena, and she is horrifically vindictive, hateful, spiteful, will single out and just tear you to pieces. And this woman got married in the community with an Italian man. She's a Croatian, and at the time they had 3 kids. I remember feeling so bad for the kids. By the time I left, I don't know if they have more. But this woman rules, and it's a dictatorship is what it is. It's a dictatorship. It's hell. You cannot leave these houses. These houses lock from the inside, and there is one key. And the person who's the little minion, I like to call them, to the person in charge is the one who sleeps with the key under their pillow. You know, you're trapped there. By the time you realize that you don't want to be there, and it's to the point that you're trying to leave, because they'll say, oh, you can leave anytime. Nobody's holding you against your will here. Nobody's holding you against your will here. They tell you that. That's what they say to you. I would have 2 days before I escaped officially for the second time and successfully got back to the U.S., which took about a week. Once I left on foot, I had to plan a daytime escape. It took me 6 months to plan it. So anyways, what was I saying? 2 days before, there was this lecture like, anybody who wants to take their suitcase and pack it and leave now, please do it. Nobody wants you to be here if you don't want to be here. Well, guess what? When I went and said, I need to make a phone call and I need my suitcase because I'm leaving, I was laughed at and locked in. You know, they absolutely do hold you against your will. In fact, towards the end, after I had escaped that same week, there was a new girl, that's what they call you, ragazza nuova, and basically she was trying to leave. She was being held against her will. She was one of the few that attempt to leave right at the beginning, and she ended up setting a fire to the woman's apartment up in the part of the house where the family was in order to escape, because they wouldn't let her out. She escaped, got to the police got involved. The community immediately took I was already gone, but every American and Croatian friend of mine, and people I didn't even know in the community at the time, packed them all in vans and shipped them off to Austria and Croatia, because we were all there illegally, and I didn't even know that at the time, because your visa only lasts so long, your passport and how long you can be there. The Americans and Croatians were there illegally, and they still are there illegally. That's the truth. So anyways, your children are not your own. The community raises your children, and these people in charge of the house, and whoever they randomly decide to choose to be in charge of the children there. Again, remember, everybody's just somebody who came there for a drug addiction or alcohol addiction or mental problems, psychosis, hallucinations, all sorts of things. All right, are in charge of your kids. Your child is used as a pawn against you. I saw this time and time again. They are used as a pawn against you. The more you conform to this community and the way that they want you to act and speak and be, the more they'll allow you an hour with your kid here and there. The more they'll allow you. Oh, this was one thing. You could get the privilege of tucking your child into bed if you made the ruler of the house happy at that day. There were women there, girls there, friends of mine, that were not allowed to tuck their own children into bed and kiss them goodnight. Sorry, this kind of stuff just makes me sick and it makes me angry. I haven't talked about this stuff in years. And it hit me because my little siblings were like kids to me. And I left them behind. And thank God that they weren't actually my children and they could have gotten sucked into there. They will indoctrinate and use your children against you. So basic rights that you have as a parent are taken and used as leverage and ways to award you for conforming. This is the way it runs. Every day is pretty much the same. You wake up at 6 in the morning if it's regular. Some of you with different houses have to wake up earlier. 6 a.m. You get up and you go to the chapel. Every house has a Catholic chapel with their blasphemous sun worship golden tabernacle with their Eucharistic host inside of it. Every morning, before anything else, you brush your teeth, you make your bed. No, you don't make your bed or anything till after chapel. You wake up and you go straight down to the chapel and you're all cram-packed in there and you kneel on the floor. There's not even kneelers, which for a lot of us that were not used to that was pretty harsh, honestly. I remember how difficult that was. And I was significantly, I mean, it could have been worse, but I was significantly overweight at 18. You know, I'd had a fluctuating malnutrition, eating disorders, starving, and then binging type of thing. And I lost a lot of weight in my teens, and then when things got really bad and I left my home for good and was in the motel, isolated on my own from like 17 to 18, I gained a ridiculous amount of weight. And so it was difficult. All this was much more difficult because of my weight. Now, obviously, of course, I started losing weight immediately because not only did I show up there in those extremes where you're chopping wood for 12 hours a day and conforming to these extremes, but I showed up during their Catholic Lenten period. And so basically, we were starved pretty much. It wasn't even typical Catholic fasting and abstinence. I mean, we were pretty much starved. We had like a bowl of lentils every day. And I lost weight really, really fast. And I lost weight faster because from the moment that I showed up there, the shock of the culture and everything else, I had no appetite or desire to eat. Whereas what I can remember from before being in the motel was I would watch TV because that's all that was in there with me. And I wasn't allowed to leave the motel room if I wanted them to keeping me in it, which was a hotel that was used for prostitution and things like that at the time, even though that's not what was happening to me there. It was going on around. It was a really like bad slummy motel. And I would like get something out of the fridge because I'd feel hungry or whatever it was I was feeling, and I would start eating it, and then I wouldn't want to eat it and I'd throw it out. And then I'd do the same thing 5 minutes, 10 minutes later. So it was just this really horrible process, and then I just gained weight so fast. I remember covering up all the mirrors in the motel, you know. And then you go to Europe where primarily, especially the way that you're worked there in these communities and the way that you are, you do get physically healthy in the sense of, you know, weight and things like that, unless you're like me and some other girls, which end up getting into other sort of eating disorders while you're there. Now, I just didn't want to eat anything. From the time I got there, it's like everything changed and clicked in my brain. And I'll get into more of this later, but I did, from the time I got there, began losing significant weight, and then very quickly mentally got into becoming anorexic, and I didn't know it or realize it at the time, and I ended up becoming over 100 pounds underweight from what my healthy BMI is. And I didn't know any of that at the time, and I didn't believe it. And it got to the point where the community themselves, which it's difficult to get out of, back at the time before I was trying to escape, when I was at the convent and convinced God wanted me to be a nun and wanted me to stay there and all this stuff with this community, and this was the real world. I had lost so much weight, and I was so sickly and pale and passing out and all things like that every day that they were trying to... There was like an ultimatum. That's how I ended up in the convent. I was 19, about 72 pounds, 5'6", and they sent me to the convent and said, you can either eat everything the nuns give you, or you can go to the hospital back in America. Like, we cannot keep you here, because they knew I was going to die, and they didn't want the liability. So that's how that situation happened. And anyways, Sorry. Trying to remember where I'd left off. Other than, oh yeah, so you go to the chapel and you say a rosary every morning. And then you have chapel midday where you say a rosary. And then you have chapel in the evening when you say the rosary. And then also you have a Eucharistic adoration where you're kneeling before the sun monstrance and the sun god host in the middle. And incantations and singing and liturgy of the hours and Catholic Mass. All of this is going on in a little chapel inside each house. And that's one of the main things that, you know, that's what they worship there and that's what they did. And as a Catholic, that was the biggest thing to me. I was like, this has to be right. This has to be the place I'm supposed to be at. I mean, these people are all about Jesus and the Eucharist and, you know, adoration and all that. And so you have 3 times a day. It's an hour each in the chapel as a community. Then once you're there for a while, you get individual chapel time. And so like adoration time, what they call it, exposition. And then Mass like 3 times a week. And then the priest there would come and they, in their homilies was the same messages that were in their cassette tapes, that were in the lectures. One of the nuns, Nevis, that left with Elvira was preaching, it was actually heresy against Catholic doctrine. And as a Catholic, she was preaching things that were actually leaning more towards a Christian perspective, which was, you know, heresy to the Catholics. But it was also mixed in with, you know, Catholicism and everything like that. And so there was just this whole mess of stuff going on. So you have that, and then you have 3 meals a day. You have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then in between, you're working. You have 30 minutes to 45 minutes of what they call free time a day. And that's after lunch before you pick up work again. And that's where you have to be with somebody. You're never allowed to be on your own. So there's only so much that you can do. You know, you can try to choose who you want to spend the time with, but you can't be alone. You will be in trouble if you are alone. So that was primarily how every single day functions. Sunday, you still had work as far as the basic stuff around the house, but you didn't go out and work. And so what we did on Sundays was a lot of walking around places. When I was in Lourdes, because we had a girls' house in Audet and Bartres, which I ended up staying in both because after 9 months in Audet, I'd lost so much weight and they had become concerned and moved me to Bartres, which was a smaller house where they thought I would be able to open up more and, you know, start eating and stuff like that. And so I stayed in both homes, both houses. But sometimes we'd come together. We'd walk 2, 3, 4 hours a day in one direction, 4 hours back. I mean, we got 8, 9 hours walking. We'd hike the Pyrenees Mountains and just come back in the same day. And there were a lot of really amazing, wonderful experiences because of this. I made many friends on the same level as me at the time. And just being able to walk around those areas. And I'm not going to lie, there are a lot of good memories and a lot of beautiful experiences that I had there. Doesn't change what the community is and that it's dangerous. And that it most certainly is not worth, you know, obviously in any situation, people who are in prison are going to bond with other people and make friends. I mean, that's just the reality. That doesn't mean it's good, and that doesn't mean it's somewhere you're supposed to be or should go just because you make friends there and have good experiences sometimes. So, anyway, another thing that they implement, and you'll realize if you come in from the outside to visit for like a week or something, which you can get special permission to do sometimes, you start using phrases and forms of language that is not typical or used in the outside world, but only in the community. And you will notice this in certain cults. Okay, so like with the Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses, you have keep sweet. Alright, so anybody familiar with those cults knows what that means and what it implies, but people who don't will be like, what does that mean? Alright, so the biggest one in Comunitá Cenacolo, at least at the time that I was there, was perdere la faccia, which means lose your face. Literally what it means, lose your face. And I realized like how much that attested to the problem with that cult, which was stripping you of your identity and who you are and making you like one with everybody. Everybody has to think the same. Everybody has to believe the same. Everybody has to act the same. Like, you literally, your life will be made a living hell. You will be made miserable if you step outside what they want you to, and your ideas and what you say and what you do. Myself and other friends that escaped or that left through other means that I know of have all had horrific experiences when we tried to leave. I mean, you are treated like dogs. You are treated less than dogs. You're treated like scum. The way these people treat you when you try to leave, or because you want to leave, you know, or because you don't want to conform to what they're doing or saying. I mean, the stuff that they put people through is just horrendous. It's horrendous there. And nobody knows this goes on, because you can look on their website and that's what you're going to see about them. Their festival that they have once a year that's like 3 days long, that is very highly controlled. Like, you have family coming from another country that hasn't seen you in 2 or 3 years for 3 days, and you don't have the freedom to sit and talk with them unless you get permission to do so by the people that run the house that you're in. And it's very, very controlled. And unfortunately, they indoctrinate the parents and the family as well. Now, my family wasn't, because they didn't go to these meetings and these other things and get involved, because they weren't those types. My family was just such a mess anyways, that even if it was a good thing, it wouldn't have happened. They have meetings and conferences for the parents, for the family members, for the friends, and they indoctrinate them. They indoctrinate them the same as they indoctrinate us within, even though it's more severe from us within. And they get the parents to conform and obey to them, you know, to go along with whatever they're doing to their child. Humiliation is a very big tactic that is used there. Like what I was speaking about, the pictures and albums and everything that they take away from you. Whatever you get back after a certain time of, you know, acting and being how they want you to be, and no infractions, you know, of telling somebody your last name, speaking about your family or loved ones, being by yourself for 5 minutes somewhere, you know, if you get stuff back, there's their pagan feast days and holidays like Easter. My first Easter and on day, what they do there is they take a cross, they make a cross, and they have you nail whatever you want on there, and then they burn it. They set it on fire, and you know, basically a lot of people would like dance around this burning cross and stuff. And I had pictures of my baby brother that passed away, my youngest brother. And I had pictures of me holding him. I had pictures of a little ring that I had, and his teddy bear and other things. And that was probably the biggest grief that I had at the time in my life, was the loss of my baby brother. I lost other siblings too, but this last one, baby John. And all the pictures and everything that I had of him, I was manipulated into, brainwashed into, pushed into burning all of these items and the pictures of my baby brother, which I did, because that's the cult, and that's what they have everybody do. So whatever they do end up giving back to you, for some reason, they will get you to a point where if you don't burn it, you're not doing God's will, you're not getting with the program, you're doing the wrong thing, your life's going to be a living hell. And so I burned pictures of my family, I burned pictures of my baby brother, I burned all sorts of items. It gets to a point you don't know who you are. I will tell you right now, when I came back to visit, they have something called verifica. They call it verifica because it means to verify. And so after they get you to a point where they believe 100% you are going to come back to them, you are so indoctrinated and brainwashed at that point that you're not going to leave. They call it verify. They will send you home. You're allowed to be there for 1 week or 2 weeks if you're an American. So if you've been away longer and more distance, you can be there for 2 weeks, tops. I exceeded that, but I actually did go back, and I was destroyed for it. I mean, my life was made a living hell. Not that it wasn't already, it just got worse and worse. So they will send you back at a point. But when I went back, I was almost 100 pounds less than I was when I left. I looked completely different. I was scorched in the sun. I mean, super dark. I looked Italian. I spoke Italian so fluently that Northern Italians thought I was from Southern Italy, and Southern Italians thought I was from Northern Italy. And Americans with romantic languages, their accents usually suck. But that wasn't the case with me. Actually, my family has a gift for languages, so it was kind of the same with someone else in my family who lived in Italy for a while. The way that I spoke, the way that I acted, the concepts and ideas that I had was not me. I'm not just talking about the beliefs in the religion, because that was the same. But I was like an alien, like aliens had abducted me and dropped me back. My family was like, who is this? Now, they might say the same thing now, but the thing now that's different is I have a different faith. I believe in different things. But I mean different person, different mannerisms, different way of speaking. Just very bizarre. And I can go back and look at pictures. I'll try to upload some of them on here. There are pictures within the first 6 months or so that I got back from Europe officially. And my eyes are straight up Mooney. Straight up Mooney brainwashed. Terrifying. Like, I mean, I almost can't look at them and not crack up and be terrified at the same time. My eyes are brainwashed. You guys, if you've ever seen anybody Mooney, okay, like the Mormons or whatnot, that there is something that happens to your eyes when you are brainwashed. And that's something that I can pick up very easily just because of seeing it in myself. And so I need a break from this point. So here's 2 parts to this, and I will finish it up probably with 1 or 2 more. To get into the nitty-gritty of it all. But if anybody's looking into this place, feel free to contact me. Feel free to write me. I can answer any questions that you have, or any concerns. Please do not go to this place. Do not send your loved ones to this place. Do not send your family, your friends, your daughter, your son, anybody to this place. Because they will convince you that we're these happy-go-lucky, because when we get out on stage to do these things and speak and give our testimonies, it is brainwashed. We are being, it's like we have knives held to our back if we say or do different. We cannot, it's literally like being held hostage when our families are there, which mine never were, but other people's family members finally come. If they get you out because you're stubborn and hard-headed and don't conform, like one girl I knew, Ashley from Texas. Go girl, by the way. I'm glad you got out when you got out. Her parents like skipped with her. I mean, they got there the first day and she was gone. But, you know, my family didn't come. My family never came and visited. I did find out that you are allowed to have letters written to and from, but what they do is they actually break federal law. They open your mail. They manipulate the mail. They take away pages, or they won't give it to you at all if there's stuff in the letters that your parents want to come get you, or they're concerned, or if you write something to them that you're concerned about, they control the mail. They control the letters. My family sent me letters that I never was given. Never. And the letter, I think the one letter that I ever got was manipulated and pages were removed from it and things were crossed out. And my family never got letters from me. And I sent them. So they also break the law in that sense. These people are breaking the law, not just U.S. federal law, but other countries' laws. They are holding people hostage against their will. The people that are there that think they're there because they need to be there and want to be there, like I did for a period of time, are brainwashed, indoctrinated. You can see it in their eyes. Yes, you're not doing drugs because you don't have access to drugs there. You don't have access to drugs there. You can't do them. That's not healing you from or recovering from a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction. The reason people end up relapsing after they come out of there is not because they didn't stay there and it's not the real world there and it is there and it's not here. It's because there was no actual recovery or treatment that happens. They just strip you away from who you are and everything. All they do is fill that void with something else that is extremely unhealthy. An alliance and loyalty to their bullshit. Excuse my French. Steer clear of this place. Please steer clear of this place. That's going to be it for today, guys.